Hey there everybody, this is Caitlin here and welcome to Card Game Tuesday where we enjoy all things card game related, and today we have another deck profile for you today. This one in particular is that we're kind of going back onto one of our older decks, whatever, that we had, and we're going to give it a little jiggery pokery. We're going to update it a little bit, we're going to add some things, we're going to take away some things, we're going to discuss some new wombo combos and whatnot. So this week in particular, if you saw the title of this deck profile, we are calling it Kaguya and the Kimono of Tears. So basically, it's going to be like the kimono kind of, not kimono turbo or whatever, but like kind of kimono based essentially. So our ruler here is Kaguya, Tears of the Moon, which is kind of where we got the name, and we've also got the super sad version of the card here. She has a Judgment of 0, which you play this ability only if a treasury item is put into your field this turn. Essentially, she can flip for 0. She also has Energized for water or wind, and she has another 0 cost ability, essentially, where it's reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a treasury item, put it into your hand. Play this ability only during your turn and only once per turn. So mainly, we're wanting to keep her on this side of the field because we want to use that ability in order to look at the top card or whatever and decide what we want. When she flips over, she has basically this wall of text, and if you've never figured out what she does beforehand, I would also advise maybe looking it up, because I'm maybe going to mess up this because it is such a wall of text. But essentially, as long as you control 3 or more treasury items, this card gains barrier. Simple enough. You rest a recovered treasury item you control. Target J/Resonators gains 200 attack until end of turn. You rest 2 treasury items. You can produce blue or green. We rest 3 recovered treasure items we control. We draw a card. Rest 4 of them. We can return target Resonator to its owner's hand, and if we rest 5 of them in total, this card becomes a 15/15 with flying until end of turn. So a lot of stuff is happening, a lot of things being said, a lot of funky things going on with this card. But essentially, our main idea is to keep it on the ruler side. We don't really want to flip. The main idea is to focus mainly on our Resonators and whatnot, and she's mainly there just to help us get treasure items. So you'll see the kind of scene build up once we start revealing some of the Resonators. So first up, 4 Tamas. Pretty staple in a card, in a deck basically, where you want to draw cards to find a different card that you need. So obviously a run drop wind resonator, 200 200. We can banish it and deal 200 damage to something as well. But we're mainly here with Tama for the ability to draw cards. Pretty much it. There's nothing really else to say about Tama in particular, because you've seen Tama a million times over. You know what Tama does. Next up, we have the Glistening Chick, which is a 2 cost, 1 wind and 1 water, 500/500 with flying. Whenever this card becomes rested, you may rest target Resonator. So in the instance where, say, obviously when it attacks or it blocks, it becomes rested, and that way you would be able to rest another Resonator in that process. So whether it's attacking or whether it's just blocking, if it survives the block, obviously, you can rest something. So that is also kind of handy, and we're keeping it as a 2 cost. This also counts as a treasure item, as you can see here, it's a treasure item / bird. So it counts for Q's ability for flipping, but we don't really care too much about flipping her. One of the main players that we have for this deck in particular is, we have this guy here, the Ancient Automaton. Is that how you say it? Automaton? Automation? I call it the Robot Lady. The Robot Lady here is a 2 cost. She's 1 water and 1 void. She's a 400/400, but get this. This card gains 200 200 for each addition you control. And guess what treasury items are? They are indeed additions. So this woman here, this lady, this mecha lady here, can get beefed up. I was going to say buffet. Can't even speak. She can get buffed up and beefed up from that. So basically, each one gives her plus 200 200. And considering that we're going to be running quite a few additions in this deck, this is going to basically help a lot. So she's going to get super swole and super beefed up essentially for this deck. But the main thing that we kind of want to use our additions on essentially is we want to be using them on Kaguya, Lunar Researcher. I am having to proxy 2 copies of this. I ideally want to run a playset of 4. I only have 2 copies though, sadly, so we will have to proxy these 2, and I'll need to just write in here that they're actually Kaguya. But for the time being, pretend we have 4, just for the sake of this profile. She is a 3 cost. She's 1 wind, 1 light, and 1 void. Hold on a second until I just get myself realigned here. She is a wanderer / human, 700 800. She's flying. We may pay 1 less to play this card if you control a moon, which is pretty cool. And whenever a card is bestowed to this card, recover this card. And you know what they did with recent additions is that you have to bestow them in order to attach them to a Resonator. So essentially, every time something gets bestowed to her, she recovers and she gets beefed up depending on obviously what we're bestowing. So she can be super, super good, as the camera shakes a little bit. So sorry about that. Next up, we actually have Gilgamesh, who is the Immortal Hunter. He is a 4 cost, 2 wind and 2 void. He is 701,000, and as long as you control 3 or more treasury items, this card cannot be destroyed, which is super duper handy. He gains 100 attack for each treasury item you control, and he has a resonance with wind magic stones where he can produce basically a will of any colour, which I believe you don't have to tap him for because it doesn't have the symbol for tapping him. You just get that colour, or you get that will essentially. We're going to keep the copies of him because we're also countering it with our big boy Odin here, who is the Omniscient. He is the Omniscient. I was going to say the Omnipotent, but he's actually the Omniscient. So he is a hefty 6 cost Resonator. He is a Darkness, a Wind, and 4 Void for 1,000, 1,000. And the reason why he's so expensive is probably because of his daft ability here, which is, if you would produce will with a magic stone you control, you produce that will plus one of the same kind as another will produced this way instead. So essentially, if we get Odin into play and he stays in play, we can potentially produce 2 will from each stone that we tap. So if it's going to be most of the practically all the stones actually that we are producing here are producing dual colors, whatever. So if we need a lot of blue, then we just tap for blue and we can we've basically got a floating blue well or whatever. So every time we tap something, it's technically counting for 2. We are running Spinning Mouse obviously to try and cheat Odin in as early as we can. Ideally, with Energize, we could try and cheat him in maybe turn 3 or something like that, depending obviously on what our pulls are like or whatever, or rather our draws are. But we want to get him in as early as possible so we can ramp up and get a lot of these additions into our field. And these additions are obviously the kimonos, which I believe I counted these out, but let me double check how many we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10. You can technically run 12. Currently, I have 10 in this deck, because I feel like 10 is enough. Like, you don't want to have too many. I know 10 seems like a lot, because obviously you can run 12 copies of this card, which is absolutely insane, but I feel like 10 is enough. 10 should be enough, because we want to draw at least a lot of them. So, some of them are foil and some of them are not, sadly. I don't have a full foil playset of kimonos, but it is the water kimono of 12 parts. It is a 1 blue edition. Obviously, it counts as a treasure item, so it also counts for Gilgamesh and everything like that. And since it's an addition, it counts for the Automaton as well. You basically only need to tap to bestow it, which makes this card super duper insane. Obviously, if you saw in X of the New World, all the kind of tap and bestow additions in that one, they all cost a will to bestow as well. So being able to bestow something for free is insanely good. Bestowed Resonator gains 100 for each water kimono of 12 parts bestowed to it, which obviously means that if we bestow it to, say, the Automaton, or we bestow it to Kaguya, they get super beef super quickly. When this card is bestowed to a Resonator, if you control a Resonator and 12 water kimono of 12 parts bestowed to it, you win the game. We don't have 12 of these, so we don't get to win the game by kimono or whatever, but at this point, it's like, you're getting super beefed up by clothing. It's like, you really don't need 12. Like, at this point, you don't need... This is excessive, probably. But I feel like we're going to try it. We're going to see how it goes. Next up, we have 3 copies of Wind-Secluded Refuge. Not much to say about this. It gets to draw as a card, which is super duper nice. And obviously, we can negate a spell or ability targeting one of our Resonators. We'd probably do this to protect Automaton or Kaguya, or even Odin, because Odin is got to stay in there if we're going to ramp up all that will here. Because obviously, we're not running Sacred Elf. I was thinking about it, but considering that most of the spells all the kimonos are just blue, I feel like ramping for green wouldn't be too helpful or whatever. Next up, we have the First Moon, which is a 2-cost addition and a treasury item, and a moon, considering that it helps Kaguya. It is 1 wind and 1 blue, or rather water. Other additions you control cannot be destroyed, and when this card becomes arrested, target Resonator gains minus 200 attack until end of turn. So I'm not quite sure how... Well, I suppose you can rest the additions for Kaguya's effect when she flips over. But mainly these are out here to protect each other and all of our additions, because obviously Heavenly Gust is a thing. It can wreck our game. So if our opponent is meaning that, we kind of want to have 2 of these out because they technically count to protect each other, and it basically locks down all our additions so they cannot be touched, which is brilliant. Moving on to other spells. We don't have too many other spells because mainly the premise of this deck is the kimonos, so there's not too many spells in here. I would totally stick in Severing Winds, but currently in this build I don't have it. Maybe in another build I may stick it in or whatever, but currently we have Foment of the World Tree, which is a 2-wind kind of chant here. It's not quite cast, sadly. We have 2 full arts as well, which is super duper nice. If I can read the card properly, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck in order. Then draw that many cards, plus 1, you gain 800 life. So this is mainly to, like, maybe put back some copies of kimonos that we maybe don't need right now, or maybe even, like, put back some, like, Tamas or whatever, maybe the Glistening Chick, just, like, try and dig through our deck and see what we can get out of it. Next up, we have the super duper sad spell, which is Millennia Bond. It is a quick cast 2-cost, 1 wind and 1 water. You can choose one. If you control a water J/Resonare and another wind J/Resonare, you may choose both. Cancel target chance spell, draw a card, or put a treasury item with total cost 3 or less from your hand into your field. So this mainly counts for like kimonos, it counts for our first moon, it counts for Glistening Chick as well, technically, I think, but we don't really want to bother with that. We mainly want to try and get kimonos in, or the first moon. And then for our last spell, we have 3 copies of a Spinning Mist. We are not using any regalia in this deck to try and get a cheaper way of like torrenting the Spinning Mist. My main hope would be that we play a Tama first and then go into Spinning Mist to get the torrent, but obviously you put some Myth Resonator from your hand into your field, so we can either stick in Gilgamesh, or preferably we would stick in Odin if we manage to get an Odin into our hand. That's why I wanted to maybe like include the Tama in case that we need to draw it before we try and play this. Our stone base is it's not all over the place, but it was a little fickle deciding it. So I have to proxy some of the Kaguya Stones of Sorrow, essentially, because I only have 1 copy. I don't know how I've only got 1 copy of it. I thought I had more, but sadly we only have 1. So I'm proxying this stone as well, sadly. Kaguya Stone of Sorrow, if I can even say Kaguya right. Basically, we don't have to pay the 300 life because Kaguya is our ruler. You treat this as a wind magic stone and a water magic stone. It produces wind and water. And whenever this enters your field, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. So it works well with Kaguya's ability to rearrange and find treasury items and whatnot. Next up we have, if I can find them correctly, 1 copy of Magic Stone of Gusting Skies, producing light and wind, mainly for Kaguya the Lunar Researcher. Oh, I cannot talk today, honest to God. Then we have Magic Stone of Light Vapors, which is the one that produces light or blue. We're mainly looking for the blue here. We've got 2 copies of this, mainly for the kimonos. And then next up we have we have the Magic Stone of Deep Wood, which is producing wind and water. So we have at least 3 ways to get light. We've got loads of ways to get blue and wind. So we're basically covered for our Magic Stones, because obviously Kaguya is the only Resonator, well technically, she's the only Resonator in this deck that needs light, even though Odin technically needs darkness, but we're hoping to cheat him in anyway with Spinning Mist. So we don't need to worry too much about not being able to produce darkness without Gilgamesh and whatnot. So anyway guys, this has been this deck profile for Kaguya and the Kimono of Tears, or whatever I called it. Yeah, the Kimono of Tears. That was what I said at the start, wasn't it? Might have been, might have not, but we'll need to wait and see. So let me know what you think of this deck profile, guys. Do you think that kimonos are going to make a comeback or whatever now that we're going to be closing in to the rotation of Alice Cluster? Do you think that they can survive into the future? Or do you think that Priscilla is just still going to dominate? Do you think the tree is just too much? Is the clothing not going to be enough to defeat the tree and everything like that? Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this deck profile, guys, and I will see you all later.